So thank you for coming, everyone. And it's great for you all to be here to hear this. I'm Robert Craig. As you all know, I'm Executive Director of Citizen Action of Wisconsin. And so, as you know, we have active members in 72 counties. And we are very well aware of the state of economic opportunity in this state. And so there's an issue about how many jobs there are. There's an issue about the quality of jobs. And there's even an issue around, if you have a good job, still having trouble getting by and getting ahead. And there's a real concern across the state, and anxiety that this will be the first generation where the kids don't do as well as their parents. And so this is a great concern. And we at Citizen Action Wisconsin have been working on a 10-year plan to figure out how we take control of the economy, because the economy is not a natural force. It's human-made, and it's too often rigged against average people. And so fortunately, Russ has been in the midst of his very famous 72-county tour and has been talking to people all over the state, and he asked to talk to us about what he's finding and start to talk about what role the federal government should play in restoring access to the American dream and really achieving the full promise of American life. So with that, I know you came to hear Russ, so Russ is going to report to us on what he's heard and what he's thinking about as far as what the federal government should do to restore the American dream. So Russ, thank you very much for joining us.
Thank you very much. Great to see all of you. I want to thank Dr. Robert Craig and Mark Thompson at Citizen Action and the Milwaukee Area Technical College for hosting this talk today. 3 months ago, when we launched our campaign for the Senate, I announced that I'd be hitting the road from my home in Middleton to all of Wisconsin's 72 counties. Our goal was to listen to the ideas and concerns of Wisconsin families, especially regarding their economic well-being. Since then, I've traveled from Rock County to Marinette County, toured Stevens Point businesses in Portage County, listened to students in Dane County, eaten too much good Wisconsin food, from the cream puffs at the state fair to some national prize-winning pie in Oconto County. In fact, by the end of this week, I will have heard from people in all 72 counties. And I'll keep visiting many of these counties again this year, some multiple times. Next year, I'll visit all 72 again. I've enjoyed it all, listening to working people and business owners all across our home state is a privilege. So today I wanted to share some of what I've been hearing. My friends, I'm hearing it's time to reunite. As I listen to people talk about Wisconsin, one of the first things I hear is how people are weary from the last 5 years of divisive politics. When political discussions with neighbors and relatives have sometimes turned angry, I see somebody strongly nodding their head. When our elected leaders seem content to represent only those who voted for them, and then insult and denigrate the rest. These politicians who rule or represent this state seem to say, people would agree with me if they just paid more attention. Or, once voters understand my argument, they'll see how wrong they are. Those kinds of comments are offensive to our state's traditions. The people of Wisconsin deserve respect. All of the people of Wisconsin deserve respect. They should be listened to first before any grand pronouncements are made. And we are especially ready for the return of our values of independence, bipartisanship, and honesty to the United States Senate. Yet, despite the attempts to divide and conquer us, what I'm happy to tell you is the people I've met across Wisconsin still carry Wisconsin's traditions of optimism and collaboration. Despite the tens of millions of third-party special interest money that has bombarded our elections, the spirit of unity is still Wisconsin's guiding principle. It's not something that needs to be recreated by a politician. It's what's always there. That spirit of unity is always there once we shed the politics of division and resentment. Democrats, Republicans, and independents across Wisconsin tell me they're ready to move forward, to build our future, and move past the same tired arguments of the past. And I felt this all over the place, but one of the places I felt it was right here in Milwaukee, over at that water hub. That's an interesting thing going on over there. Water Council, University of Wisconsin College of Freshwater Science. President and the CEO of the Water Council gave me a tour, told me and showed me that A.O. Smith has come down there, one of the leading manufacturers of residential and commercial water heaters and boilers, has an operation there. Zurn Industries just announced that they're planning to move their corporate headquarters from Pennsylvania to Milwaukee's Reed Street Yards Water Technology Park. Some 120 jobs. When I met with my friends at the AFL-CIO, who I was so proud to have endorse me, I mentioned that and they go, yeah, we think that's going to be good for us. We think there's going to be some good jobs coming out of that. So it's a university. It's big business. It's small business. There's a lot of startups there. They're very exciting. They're going to create a lot of small business jobs. You put this all together, and what you have right here in Milwaukee is not only a national model where I think it's going to be the center for freshwater activity in the country, if not the world, but this is just the type of optimism and collaboration I mean. I felt that spirit on the streets of Chippewa Falls when I got a tour of their Main Street program. I felt that spirit in Hudson, Wisconsin, up near the Minnesota border, where they're also making strides to have that kind of cooperation. So this is the type of unity people tell me they want. But this work of unifying Wisconsin requires listening, and then it requires action, not just lectures or excuses or partisan sermons. And that's the reason I'm running for the U.S. Senate, to provide the leadership in Washington to actually get things done. And the people of Wisconsin want us to get things done that will move us toward greater economic well-being for all Wisconsin families. That is what I've heard the most. So in this regard, the first question to answer is, who is our economy working for? The Great Recession hurt everyone. Working Americans all took a hit. Many people lost their homes, their savings, and their retirement. We've made some progress. In October 2009, unemployment peaked at 10%. Last month, our national unemployment rate was 5.3%. The Dow Jones, the NASDAQ, and the S&P 500 have all hit new record highs in the past year. Wall Street earnings reports are up. Those at the very top have recovered, and then some. But as I travel this state, I hear the same concern over and over. The economy still isn't working well enough for the families in Wisconsin who work the hardest. The promise of a full economic recovery has sometimes seemed possible, but so far it has still fallen short. So, is this to be the new normal? Fewer economic possibilities? Low wages? Constant worry about paying even basic bills? People have told me that Washington is too concerned about the ultra-wealthy and big corporations. And without new leadership, they fear they'll have to try to just keep scraping by forever. I want to give voice to these concerns. So let's get into some specifics about what I've heard listening to people across the state. First, despite a top-line unemployment rate that has fallen, some people in Wisconsin still can't find a good-paying job. In some cases, this comes down to a matter of making sure people have access to the training necessary for good-paying skilled jobs. Just last month, in beautiful Forest County in northeast Wisconsin, I visited a company called Hometown Trolley in Crandon, Wisconsin. This is a third-generation owned trolley manufacturer. They specialize in producing trolleys in the spirit of the old streetcars of the 1800s while integrating environmentally friendly alternative fuel technologies. And they sell streetcars to cities and companies all over the country and all over the world, around the United States, Stamford, Connecticut, Santa Barbara, California. Now, this is a place that doesn't have a whole lot of employment opportunities, and this place alone employs over 50 people. Most have received welding training from the Milwaukee Area Technical College in Rhinelander or the North Central Technical College in Anago. And then they are trained additionally on the job, on site. Where trained welders were once hard to come by, the demand has now shifted to those specializing in automotive electric for the electric trolleys and for heavy diesel mechanics. So I'm told even that the lady that makes the leather hand straps for the trolleys she says she can't keep up with the orders. And that's not a bad problem to have. So I'm encouraged by those proposals that are out there now to make two-year community college programs more accessible. Investments in our workforce on the front end will pay dividends later. It will benefit not just our students, but the employers who are so eager or even desperate for qualified workers. Another good example came in Oshkosh. In May, I visited a web design and internet marketing firm called DealerFire in downtown Oshkosh. Now, this firm is situated in an old building that uniquely represents the economic history of the area. It was once a fur trading operation, and I guess old Xerox machines went there to die back in the 60s. But this guy fixed it up into a beautiful building. His name's Eric Hoopman, who founded DealerFire in 1999. And at this point, the company employs 100 people with the hopes of hiring many more. What do? They are sitting there designing websites for the car dealers of the world. They're one of the 2 or 3 top designers of those websites. That never could have been done in Oshkosh in the past. The internet creates this opportunity. And when I was up there, he told me he had a desire to hire 30 more people. He had a need for it right away. But the need was to make sure that these folks had the right degrees in various fields, from computer science to journalism, often from 4-year institutions. But some of these engineers have 2-year degrees, and some are even self-taught. The employees, as I say about the other example too, receive valuable skill training at the firm once they are hired. So I think there is absolutely nothing wrong with and everything right with the federal government being a partner in helping provide the training to make this possible. These are the encouraging stories that we can have a greater impact on. Also, I frequently heard across Wisconsin the concern that we need to invest in our transportation, water, and digital infrastructure, not only to employ Wisconsinites to do that work, but to build the backbone for Wisconsin businesses to succeed and grow. That means fixing our roads and bridges and our water infrastructure and treatment facilities. It means that Congress must stop the irresponsible political game playing with the Highway Trust Fund and pass a good long-term plan that we can rely and plan with. We also have to make sure that the internet service for Wisconsin rural businesses is competitive with service in larger cities. We cannot simply fall back on wireless connections just because the big carriers want it. And in June, I had a chance to have a good conversation about that. Sat down for lunch with a number of community leaders and business owners in Prairie du Chien in southwest Wisconsin. At the lunch, Joe Ruski, the owner of Dependable Solutions, Inc., a technology consulting firm, he told me that the issue of broadband, specifically the lack of broadband access in that region of the state, is a big problem in terms of attracting jobs and attracting business. Joe and his wife Tina love the area, but Joe tells you that it's not easy recruiting and keeping employees, in part because of this broadband issue. This not only affects businesses, but students. I mean, let's face it, not having access to broadband for students in our state puts them at an immediate disadvantage to anyone who has access. I like to say that when I was a kid, high school, the internet was the World Book downstairs. And if the assignment was, go do a report on Tunisia, you go down there and there's like a paragraph, homework's done. That's not the world we're in now. It's not fair that some students don't have that access. The businesses and students in every corner of this state deserve to be on the same playing field. And you know what? Despite the efforts to pit working people against others in this state, I've seen cooperation between working communities, working people, labor unions, and small business people. For example, in Coloma, Wisconsin, this is where the operating engineers have their training facility. And I just attended a huge dedication of a new training facility. They're closely in cooperation with the Fox Valley Technical College. But before I went over to this wonderful event with thousands of people who were so excited about the training opportunities and employment opportunities. We went into Coloma. You know, Coloma's not a left-wing town, okay? Everybody had their shirts on for the operating engineers because they knew that that program there that relates to the infrastructure and building infrastructure was revitalizing their small businesses in their town. It was that spirit of unity, and not only unity, but a spirit of enthusiasm and welcoming that we are all about. So, yes, it's about getting a job, but it's also about having a job and then being able to pay the bills. So second, I'm alarmed by how many people who have a job or multiple jobs tell me they still can't pay their bills. Before I started on this tour, I thought maybe I ought to get a checkup at the doctor. Thought it'd be a good idea. Went well, but then doctor sent me down. She said, you go down there and now you get your blood taken. So I go down there and I walk in, and the lady's going to take the blood sample, says, we are so glad you're running. Thank you for running. And she puts me on that chair and lays down, gets my arm ready, you know. And I said, well, how are you doing? She goes, psh. You know? And she said, well, to be honest with you, I'm you know, she didn't say it in an angry way. She said, I've been working here for 26 years. There she was at 7:30 in the morning doing this work every day. She said, I can't pay my bills. She's got a job. It's a decent job, but the wages have been stagnant. She can't pay her bills. She says she never has a chance to go out or do anything because she doesn't have any extra money, but she doesn't even say she needs that right now. She just wants to be able to pay her bills. That's what I hear all over this state. Sometimes people tell me they can't pay their bills because their wages are just too low. Our federal minimum wage, $7.25, does not come close to matching inflation. In other words, basics like food and housing have become more expensive, but comparatively, the buying power of the minimum wage has decreased. Just matching inflation since the 70s would add more than $2 to our current federal minimum wage. And raising the minimum wage to $12 would mean a raise for nearly 400,000 women in Wisconsin and help to close the gender wage gap. But I don't think a small raise is enough. Americans who work full-time deserve a living wage. They deserve a living wage. So I believe we must look beyond incremental changes and aim to gradually increase the federal minimum wage to $15. Now, my likely opponent, the incumbent senator, opposes entirely, get this, opposes entirely a federal minimum wage, at least for Americans. Apparently he has some openness about guest workers. Disrespecting the hard work and dignity of too many working Wisconsinites. To me, this is fundamental. Low wages mean increased reliance on assistance programs and less purchasing power for customers to buy needed goods and services locally. A living wage means being able to put healthy food on the table for your family. Finally, families tell me their kids often end up buried in student debt. Debt at interest rates often higher than our mortgages and car loans. Debt that is enriching big banks and the federal government, all the while saddling our young working families with huge monthly payments that eat away at their income. Student debt is not merely an inconvenience, and it's not even a fair deal. Student debt is now an economic crisis, totaling nearly $1.2 trillion of debt, with 7 in 10 Wisconsinites graduating in debt in 2013, carrying an average balance of over $28,000. I listened closely to the chancellor of University of Wisconsin, River Falls, lay out the facts for me. Something like 60% of the young people at that branch of our great university need Pell Grants and have Pell Grants. Something like 25 to 35% need student loans. 60% graduate with a student loan debt. And this is only one example And you know, that's the kind of campus that frankly where families by and large, or kids by and large come from families with relatively lower income than those, for example, at the University of Wisconsin-Madison on average. So, we can act now about this by making student loans subject to refinancing, just like we do with mortgages. But we have to pass a law to do that, to make sure it happens. In fact, there's already legislation proposed in the Senate to do it. I support it, but my likely opponent already voted against it. In the longer term, I'm encouraged by new proposals to allow future students to graduate without debt from our public institutions. This conversation is really starting to move. The time has come for our public institutions to serve everyone. Wisconsin's young people shouldn't have to delay starting a family or buying a house or taking a risk to start a small business just because they're saddled with tens of thousands of dollars of debt. We know, though, why this problem hasn't been solved. It's because too many people in Washington, like the incumbent senator, have no idea what it's like to need student loans because they spent too long in their private world of privilege. In their private world of privilege, where tuition bills are often simply paid in cash, semester after semester. Can you afford to do that? If not, then my opponent, who has repeatedly said that he opposes all government-assisted student loans, I'll repeat that. He believes the federal government should have never gotten involved in it and opposes all government-assisted student loans. He basically says, well, if that's the situation you're in, college might just not be for you or your children. Imagine such a country where our doctors, our teachers, our scientists come almost exclusively from families of privilege. So you get a job, maybe you're paying the bills. There's still things that happen that can make it very tough. Even those with good jobs who are able to pay their regular monthly bills sometimes find economic security out of reach. So that's the third element. This comes into play when a family faces extraordinary expenses like the college expenses we just talked about, but also expenses like a home or a car repair, birth of a new child, long-term care for an elder, the wedding of a son or a daughter to start their own lives and family. I know a little bit about this because I have two wonderful daughters who both got married to wonderful guys, and I needed some money to pay for the weddings, and it wasn't sitting there. So, greatest events of my life, but let's face it, it costs something. We must help families have access to lending that is available, transparent, and fair. Too often we see lenders from payday loan operations to bigger banks and credit card companies make loans specifically because they know the borrower will never pay off the principal. Now, that's the definition of cynicism. And it's important to remember that this is not just a few cases of very desperate, irresponsible people scraping for cash. This is a reality for far too many. In fact, a couple of weeks ago, it was reported that even the governor of Wisconsin, Scott Walker himself, is paying 27% on over $10,000 of credit card debt. I'll leave it to others to comment on that fact. But it does say something about our economy overall. This industry must change. Finally, we must provide paid family leave for parents. Paid leave allows families to plan for the future and upholds our belief that caring for a newborn child is not just a priority, but it's something someone who works hard should be able to do without fear or insecurity. So what does this all mean to the daily life of a family? As I travel Wisconsin, logging thousands of miles from Superior to Kenosha, I've begun to hear a pattern. This economy, even years after the crash, is still rigged in favor of the ultra-wealthy and corporations. And people know that the economy will stay that way unless we make real changes. Over and over, the people I hear from say they're constantly focused on their finances, sometimes from morning until night. Now, let's be honest, that's always somewhat true, but this seems extreme. Everyone agrees that building a career and a family in the future is rarely easy, but far too many say the work and worry they do to scrape by, calculating what bills need to be paid first, taking second jobs on the weekend, keeping track of seasonal expenses like back-to-school supplies and winter coats, or just making sure the lights stay on, is eating away their lives. It's consuming the precious time you should be able to spend enjoying your family and friends, which hard work should allow. But the people I hear from are ready to work to reclaim that time and their lives, from the banks and corporations who profit off the economic hardship of average Wisconsinites. My friends, I'm running for the United States Senate to be a partner in that fight. Finally, let me return to the ideas and solutions that should be the Senate's first responsibility. There's work to be done in the Senate to lay the groundwork for an economy that works for all Wisconsinites and prevents another crash that hurts working Wisconsinites the most. In 1999, I was one of only 8 senators to vote against repealing the law that prevented investment banks from gambling with our savings account, a law from 1933 that set the rules of the road for Wall Street following the Great Depression. And without basic rules of the road, banks become too big to fail, forcing Washington to bail them out with taxpayer money. But still today, Democrats and Republicans both agree that banks are still too big to fail. It's time to put those basic rules of the road back in place and reinstate the principles of the Glass-Steagall Act. And I've mentioned bipartisanship several times. There's a bipartisan bill in the Senate, co-sponsored by John McCain and Democrat Maria Cantwell, to do just that. The Senate should pass it immediately. Second, the Senate must never again threaten a shutdown of our government for partisan game playing and one-upsmanship. And third, the Senate must not repeat the mistakes of the past. Proponents of the trade deals of the 1990s, like NAFTA, must admit the damage they did to the manufacturing sector of our country, of our state, of this great city, and oppose new versions of these same raw deals like the Trans-Pacific Partnership. It doesn't matter how you dress it up. It's still a giveaway to corporations and a punch in the gut to working Wisconsinites. That's what it is. My friends, we need to honor everyone's hard work and be partners in making sure that people can enjoy the fruits of their hard work and enjoy their family. The multimillionaires and corporations that are dominating this country like to say that anyone who tries to do anything about this believes in big government solutions. That's just plain false. Government should only be involved when necessary. But when people work so hard and still can't make ends meet, our government should step up as one of the partners trying to fight the corporate domination of the lives of the working families of Wisconsin and of the United States. Friends, I grew up in Wisconsin. I went to public school all the way through college, my undergraduate degree. I grew up in Janesville, Wisconsin. For generations, most of my family was actually involved in small business. My grandfather had a little grocery store on Racine Street. My father practiced law on Main Street, and my mother worked at a title company on Milwaukee Street. Those are the big streets in Janesville. I did not come from a family of government employees. But growing up, I learned the value of public service, whether voluntary or whether it's your job. My parents worked hard to provide for us, and when they had the time and resources, they gave back to the community too, and encouraged us to do so. This is what happens when families experience economic well-being. It's good for them, but it also ushers in an era of unity in a community, which is what I saw growing up in Janesville, Wisconsin, when I was growing up. The whole community was benefiting, not just a few privileged people. When people are rewarded for their work, they can put down roots in a community and participate in civic life. And that helps all of us unify and succeed together. So my friends, thank you for being here. To conclude, the bottom line: people don't care about the politics or whose economic theories are the purest. They just expect public servants to work hard and get results just like they do every day. Thanks so much.